Thank you for joining me for another episode of A White Woman in Distress. This podcast is dedicated to raising awareness for missing children, teens, and adults who have vanished under heartbreaking circumstances. My mission is simple: to keep their stories alive and to help bring them back to their families. In a world where media coverage isn't always equal, it's vital to recognize that many cases go overlooked. Marginalized groups, including Indigenous people, people of color, the LGBTQ+ community, runaway teens, and homeless individuals. They often face systematic barriers leading to underinvestigation and inadequate attention. These groups deserve to have their stories heard just as loudly, whether it's the jurisdictional complexities affecting Indigenous women and girls, the media bias towards missing people of color, or the stigmas facing runaway teens and those living on the streets. These cases remind us that real change is needed. Grassroots efforts, community engagement, and legislative advocacy are essential in turning the tide. You don't have to be on the front lines to make a difference. Even small actions like sharing information or providing anonymous tips can play a crucial role in bringing loved ones home. Every family deserves answers, and every missing person deserves to be found. Before we dive into today's story, please be aware that content may include themes of violence, sexual assault, or other distressing topics. Listener discretion is advised. Today, we're covering one of the oldest and most mysterious unsolved cases out of West Point, Virginia: the disappearance of 16-year-old Elsie Mae Roane. This case has haunted her small community for over 60 years, and despite the passage of time, questions about her fate remain unanswered. Elise's story is one that exemplified the heartbreak of a small town's loss. In today's episode, we're diving into the details of her disappearance, the theories that have emerged over the years, and why this case still matters today. We'll also discuss how cold cases like Elise's remain unresolved but never forgotten, thanks to community members, law enforcement, and advocates who refuse to give up hope. Who was Elsie Mae Roane? To understand the depth of this case, it's important to know a little about who Elsie was. Born on November 6, 1940, Elsie Mae Roane was a bright and determined young woman growing up in the small town of West Point, Virginia. West Point is the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, and in the mid-1950s, it was even more tightly knit. Elsie was described as an above-average student at West Point High School, where she was finishing her sophomore year at just 16. She was on the verge of adulthood, balancing her responsibilities at home and at school. At the time of her disappearance, Elsie was living with her adoptive father. Her adoptive mother had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving Elsie and her father to adjust to life on their own. Despite these challenges, she was known for being strong-willed and independent, qualities that made her disappearance even more perplexing. The night of May 20th, 1957. Here's what we know. The last confirmed sighting of Elsie Mae Roane occurred around 11 p.m. on May 20th, 1957. A police officer in downtown West Point saw Elsie walking down the street carrying 2 suitcases. She was wearing her eyeglasses, and from all accounts, she appeared to be leaving town. There were no signs of distress, no hurried movement, just a girl seamlessly preparing for a journey. This sighting was the last time anyone saw or heard from her. The fact that she was carrying suitcases is one of the key elements of this case, as it led to early speculation that maybe she had just run away. However, as the days turned into weeks and no further signs of Elsie appeared, the idea that she had just simply vanished without a trace became harder to believe. It wasn't until 3 days later, on May 23rd, that Elise's adoptive father realized that she was missing. He works a night shift at the local Navy depot, so it wasn't unusual for him to return home during school hours and miss seeing her. As time passed and Elsie didn't come home, he reported her missing. Unfortunately, the 3-day delay meant that any leads that police might have had were already cold. By the time the report was made, Elsie had been gone for 72 hours. This crucial period is often the most important in missing persons cases, and the delay severely hindered search efforts. Despite an extensive search, neither Elise nor her belongings were ever found, and the case quickly grew cold. For nearly 60 years, her disappearance baffled both law enforcement and the community. Now, let's explore the different theories that have developed over the years. The first theory is the most obvious theory, is that maybe she just ran away. Given that she was seen with 2 suitcases and may have been pregnant, it's plausible to think that she was leaving town to escape her situation. At the time, teenage pregnancy was highly stigmatized, especially in small towns like West Point. It's possible that she feared the repercussions or felt that she had no other choice but to run away. However, there are many reasons to doubt this theory. First, no bus or train tickets were purchased in Elise's name, and no one came forward to say that they had seen her after that night. If Elise had run away, she left no trace, no letters, no phone calls, no indication that she has just started a life somewhere else. The complete absence of communication raised suspicion that something more sinister may have happened to her. As the runaway theory became less convincing, a darker theory emerged that Elise met an unfortunate demise and that foul play was at hand. This theory gained traction over the years as more details came to light. In 2012, West Point Police Chief Bobby Mayer reopened the case. By 2015, his team had identified a suspect, a man who was around Elise's age at the time of her disappearance and is still alive today. While police have not released the suspect's name, they have interviewed him multiple times. Despite these efforts, authorities have not gathered enough information to make an arrest. The possibility that Elise was murdered remains, but without further evidence, the case has stalled. Investigators have expressed hope that they will eventually find Elise's remains, which could finally lead to answers. Elise's disappearance has left a lasting impact on her community. In a small town like West Point, a case like this doesn't just fade away. Former classmates, neighbors, and even those who didn't know her personally still feel the weight of her absence. It's a story that has been passed down through generations, with each new detail adding to the mystery. In recent years, there have been renewed efforts to bring closure to Elise's case. Police Chief Mayer and his team have made it clear that they won't give up until they find answers. The primary goal now is to locate Elise's remains so that she and her possible child can be laid to rest properly. The case of Elsie Mae Roane also highlights the importance of community involvement in solving cold cases. Even the smallest piece of information can be crucial. Mayer has called to the community to come forward if they remember anything from that night, even after all these years. As they say, small towns keep their secrets, but rarely stay hidden forever. So why does this case still matter today, as most of you may be wondering? Beyond the obvious desire for justice, Elise's story is a reminder of how easily cases can go cold when crucial time is lost. Her case also represents the pain of unsolved mysteries, especially when loved ones are left without knowing answers for decades. Cold cases like this one are often the result of delays, lack of evidence, or missing opportunities. But as we've seen with other cases, breakthroughs can happen years, even decades later. It just takes the right piece of information or a determined investigator to push the case forward. We hope that whomever the suspect is decides that he needs to tell the truth and to give the family closure, but to also allow Elise and her possible unborn child the proper burial that they deserve so that she can be laid to rest and this case can be solved. As we close today's episode, I want to emphasize that Elise's case is still open, still unsolved, and still needs attention. If you or anyone that you know have any information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, I urge you to contact the West Point Police Department at 804-843-2800. Even after 60 years, every small tip counts. Cases like Elise's remain unsolved because they fade from public memory. By keeping her story alive, we can help bring closure to her family and community. If you want to get involved, consider supporting organizations like NamUs or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. which work tirelessly to keep missing persons cases from going cold. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of A White Woman in Distress. And together, we can keep a shining light on cold cases like Elise's. Join me next time as we continue to explore the stories of the missing and forgotten. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and let's keep fighting for justice. Don't forget to subscribe and share. I'm available on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. And remember, if you see something, say something, and do something.